China continues to have a growing impact on the semiconductor industry, and you can look at it from different angles, irrespective of the yardstick you use or the lens you look through. Every year, China's impact on the industry is growing, and that trend isn't likely to stop anytime soon. So we've certainly seen growing share of China in production, semiconductor production, though the semiconductor production is not growing at the same pace as the semiconductor consumption is growing. So as a result, we have certainly seen a growing gap between consumption and production. And that gap grew to $68 billion at the end of 2008 and then shrank slightly to $67 billion in 2009. The growth of consumption of semiconductors in China is partially as a result of growing demand for semiconductors for local consumption in China. This consumption is fueled by growing middle class. For companies to leverage this market, they have to focus on Chinese standards. China has a tendency to develop its own unique standards, and for companies to fully benefit from the growing consumption in China, they have to understand those standards, and those standards are going to be better understood and leveraged with a greater local presence. Another area where companies need to keep an eye is acquisition opportunities. So as we indicated in this study, we see an increasing number of semiconductor startups coming out of China, and these startups achieving success as is evidenced by their completing initial public offerings. When it comes to innovation, semiconductor industry has always led the technology industry. And when you're looking and measuring innovation, two things come to mind. One is the patents. The patents are an indication of where the new technology is emerging. When you look at the patents issued, China represented 13% of the patents issued for technologies relating to semiconductor in 2005. That number increased to 22% in 2009, and we expect this number to continue to increase in future. The second place you look at is the startups, and startups which are succeeding. And in the startup world, success generally means an initial public offering and also sometimes a buyout. So when you look at the stat for initial public offering, again, Chinese-based semiconductor companies are doing very well. Rather, if you look at the last 4 quarters, Chinese-based semiconductor companies represented over 50% of the semiconductor companies completing IPO. And rather, Chinese stock exchanges represented 80% of the money raised by Chinese semiconductor companies in the last 4 quarters in IPOs. So both from a IPO startup success as well as patents issued, we certainly see China doing very well, which is a clear indication that when it comes to innovation for semiconductor companies, Chinese companies are again doing well.